on approaches to develop the physical factor. Today we're going to look specifically at approaches to develop physical skills. For your higher PE exam, you need to be able to identify different approaches for each factor. You need to be able to describe these approaches. You need to be able to explain why you've selected these approaches. And you need to be able to analyse or evaluate their effectiveness. Remember, when we see the word approaches, we're thinking about types of training, things that we've done in the practical to improve the physical factor, and today we're looking at physical skills. So we're looking at improving our accuracy, our consistency of skill, and our technique. And there's three main approaches that we're going to talk about in today's video, and we're going to look at some examples of those: shadow practice, repetition drills, and conditioned games. So what is shadow practice? Well, shadow practice is all about practicing a skill to get the feel of the action. We're going to use this to try and improve our technique, and this would be something that you would use at the first stage of learning when you're just getting used to preparing to learn the skill. You're trying to practice the motion over and over. Now you can do this with equipment or you can do it without equipment. For example, taking a practice swing in golf is a form of shadow practice. It could be in badminton that we're trying to hit an overhead clear over and over with just a racket in our hand. Here's a couple of different examples of shadow practice. The first one is from basketball when learning how to do a layup. And the next one is from badminton. So again, we're just practicing with the racket in hand here. We're looking a little bit at footwork, and we're also looking at getting side on and trying to hit the shuttle at its highest point. So as you can see, they are practicing with limited equipment. We're now going to look at repetition drills, and this is maybe something that you would progress towards. So we're practicing a skill over and over, and this will help us to develop muscle memory because we're practicing this skill over and over, and it helps us to groove the correct technique once we've got the feel of the action. This is really useful for developing our consistency of skill, also our control and our accuracy when performing one particular skill. We're now going to look at some examples of these from basketball and from badminton. So you practice this over and over. Oh, missed that one. Here's an example from badminton looking at our overhead clear. The last approach that we're going to talk about is conditioned games, and this is perhaps the hardest one. Conditioned games is where you practice a skill in a game-like context. Now, to do this, you might change the rules of the activity. You might add in a certain scoring zone or an area to try and promote the use of a certain skill, and this helps us to practice the skill under pressure in a game-like context. An example of this could be playing 3-touch in football, or a headed goal is worth 2 points. A headed goal is worth 2 goals rather than 1. In badminton, it could be that a smash shot winner is worth 3. Here you're going to see an example of a conditioned game. The condition here is that if the shuttle lands between the service line and the net, so the front white line that you can see on screen just now, and the net, it's worth 3 points. So we're trying to develop our drop shot. So that would be worth 3 points. Again, that would be worth 3 points because it's landed at the front. We're now going to look at how we would describe these approaches, and when we're describing them, we have to tell the marker in short, sharp sentences, try and paint a picture of what you did, where you did it, who you carried it out with, and how you actually used that approach. On screen just now is an example of using a repetition drill in badminton. Pause the video here to look at this in more detail. So we're now going to talk about why we might use these particular approaches. Well, they could be relevant to your stage of learning. So if you're learning a new skill, doing shadow practice and then progressing on to repetition would be absolutely relevant to your stage of learning. You get multiple opportunities to practice the skill if we're doing repetition. You can get the feel of the action using shadow. Using repetition, we can get some muscle memory because we're getting a chance to groove the action over and over. These approaches can be adapted and quite easily made harder as the program progresses, and there's limited pressure using repetition because you get multiple opportunities to hit the shuttle. On screen just now is 2 points of explanation. So I chose to use repetition as it was easily adaptable. We've then gone on to give an example. So for example, as my overhead clear improved, I could increase the number of feeds from 10 to 15 to put me under more pressure, and I could also add more targets to the core to help me develop my accuracy. This meant that as I improved, I was able to change the approach to keep it challenging for me and to improve my accuracy and consistency. And secondly, I chose to use repetition as it allowed me to focus on one skill. For example, my weakness is my overhead clear, and repetition allows me multiple opportunities to develop that skill away from the game situation. This means that I can practice my overhead clear over and over to develop muscle memory so that I can perform it better in a game. You may also be asked to analyse the effectiveness of this approach or to evaluate it, and we're going to look at how we might evaluate it here. So remember, with evaluate questions, you have to give a judgment as to why it was effective or ineffective, and we've said that using repetition drills is effective because you get multiple opportunities to practice one skill. This means I can focus on my weakness, my smash, and I can play this shot over and over to develop muscle memory. This also means that if it doesn't matter if I hit the shuttle into the net or out of the court as I'm practicing it away from the game. Moving on now to repetition. This is ineffective because it's not game-like. This means that I'm standing in the middle of my court waiting to play a smash, and I know where my partner is going to serve to, so I'm not having to make any decisions. Similarly, if I make a mistake, there's no consequences, unlike a game where I would lose a point. I hope you found this video useful. Thank you very much for watching. There's more videos.